Hi, and welcome to today's video where we will be diving into the world of networking to explore some of the fundamental concepts of MAC addresses and IP addresses. I'll cover what a MAC address is, what is an IP address, differences between a MAC address and an IP address, can a MAC address be compared to an IP address, and vice versa, and a lot more as you can see in the intro slide. So let's start with what is a MAC address. A MAC address is a unique identifier that is assigned to a network interface card by the manufacturer it has been made by. If you look at the picture, which is right here, that is a network interface card for a desktop PC. These can also be called NICs. NICs comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes to fit into devices like the desktop PC. But the main purpose is the same with all NICs, and that is getting you connected to a local area network. Each NIC is connected to a network device such as your desktop PC, laptop, or smartphone, and many other things so they can communicate with each other within the same local area network. Because I'm mentioning NICs is because they are the ones who has the MAC address on them. You can put it like this. Think of the MAC address. It is the NIC's physical address that enables devices to communicate within the same local area network. So in essence, the MAC address is the digital fingerprint that a NIC has, which is assigned to it when the NIC has been made by the manufacturer. Manufacturers embed this MAC address onto each NIC during production, and that ensures that there won't be two NICs that share the same MAC address. So moving on to what is an IP address. An IP address allows you to send and receive data across the internet or any other local area network that uses the IP protocol. That means an IP address is what gives you the option to communicate with other network equipment and devices that is not within your own local area network. So an IP address is an essential thing for enabled communication between devices across multiple networks. So you're not stuck inside communicating within only your local area network that you are situated in. The IP address is what we can call the logical address. So now that we have a brief understanding of the fundamental aspect of an IP address and a MAC address, let's explore what the differences are between the two. The key importance lies in the functionality they each have. Let's start out with talking about MAC addresses, and then afterwards we take the IP addresses. A MAC address is unique to each network interface card. During production, the MAC address is embedded on the card by the manufacturer. So that means a MAC address has already been predefined before you have the network card within your possession. That is not to say that you cannot change the MAC address, and it cannot be changed. It's just not very common in everyday practice as to why you should change a MAC address. Nevertheless, if you're testing something and maybe are trying out how to learn to spoof a MAC address, then the MAC address can be changed, but that is not recommended for my side. MAC address communication is also different compared to IP addresses, how that works. MAC addresses is used in the layer 2 of the OSI model, which is called the data link layer, whereas IP addresses is used in layer 3 of the OSI model, which is called the network layer. Frames are used in layer 2, the data link layer, for communication between layer 2 equipment. This is typically layer 2 switches, and these switches can be seen here on the slide as well. So now let's talk about IP addresses. They are more common to be changed since that depends on what network an IP address is connected to. An IP address must be part of a network, so it must match a valid IP address from the network it wants to be part of, or else your IP address cannot really be used. IP addresses are used in private networks and public networks. There are two types of networks, private and public. It's good to know the difference about them. We have certain IP version 4 addresses that can only be used within private networks, such as your own local area network at home. This can be seen here on this slide here, or on the slide we are, and this is the range of them. These are some addresses that can be used repeatedly across multiple private networks. So your neighbor can actually use the same private addresses as you are within their own local area network. But how is that possible for your neighbor to use the same private IP addresses as you are already using? This can be done because we have something called NAT. To briefly talk about NAT in this video, When a device from your home network wants to access the internet, it firstly goes out to your router. Then your router changes the private IP address that you have to your outgoing public IP address with the help of NAT. This way, when you want to access anything on the internet, the IP address that is being used is your public IP address. But why can't you just use your private IP address to access everything? Well, private IP addresses cannot be used out on the internet. If you try to use a private IP address out on the internet, that IP packet would just be dropped. Then the question comes as to why do we have both private and public IP addresses? That all boils down to IP version 4. IP version 4 was never intended for so many people to use the internet. IP version 4 has these addresses available, which I have just added in here on the slide. It's 4,294,967,296 addresses. These addresses were not enough for everyone to use the internet, so to eliminate the exhausted IP version 4 addresses we had left, NAT was invented and the ranges for both private and public addresses came to life to IP version 4. Public IP addresses, as mentioned before, is IP addresses that can be used out on the internet. These are the IP addresses that are being used to facilitate communication from your house or company out to your internet. Or to the internet, sorry. So you can use your favorite things on the internet. The public IP address is the one that you pay your ISP for so you can browse the internet, which is within this range of public IP addresses of IP version 4. Now, as to how IP addresses they facilitate their communication, they do this in a different way compared to MAC addresses. With IP addresses, there is being used package in the layer 3 where they are having their communication, which is called the network layer of the OSI model. This is typically layer 3 switches and routers and firewalls that typically needs this information, which can be seen here of these two. I do know this is very general information about a lot, but if I am to dive in all the details as to how the OSI model works, the difference between IP version 6, 4, how IP addresses and MAC addresses work at its core, to get in the nitty-gritty of all the details that is about them, then this video would be very long. I'm thinking about making in the future a full step-by-step guide in more depth, so I hope to make them in the future as well, so stay tuned for them. So as to which is more important than the other, that you cannot really say, since both the MAC address and the IP address is used for two different purposes in the networking world. MAC addresses is needed for within local area networks for communication, that is all layer 2 traffic in the OSI model. IP addresses is needed for communication between multiple networks to talk with one another. Either this is a private network or public network, where the traffic here is the layer 3 of the OSI model. That is what I have for now. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more content, and please feel free to leave any questions in the comments section below. Have a good day and take care.